Hello, everybody. Welcome back to something a little bit different. Now, I hope you all had a chill and wonderful 4th of July. I know I did. I got to have fun with my friends. I got to swim a little bit. I got to eat some good food. All around, a very good time. And I hope you're also having an even better end to your week, especially a good Friday. And yes, I know what you all are thinking, and I know what you're saying. Yes, I was supposed to put out this video on Thursday. Yes, like many of my videos, they have been a little bit late. A couple different things. First off, not best with time management, and when I have other things on my plate, this kind of gets pushed to the wayside. And second, I'm doing something a little bit different, which requires a little bit more work and a little bit more planning, as well as I'm thinking the actual structure of this and some things I want to do. So rather than push everything on Thursday and put a lot of pressure on me to put out something new, I decided, hey, I'm going to take the time, actually go through this on Friday, and say everything and be able to have an awesome video as a debut for this new series. This is not going to change anything else that I'm putting out this week. In fact, you'll still get a cover song on Saturday and a new argument on Sunday. I just needed the time to make sure I knew exactly how I wanted to approach this. So what am I talking about? Well, my friends, I am doing a new series starting today. And that series is called Digging Through Discographies. Now, as the name probably promptly suggests, I'm going to be looking at the band's entire discography and going through LP after LP after LP, all the main albums. I may look at some EPs, probably not. The only ones I would really do are ones that have prominent songs that came from those EPs that weren't on any other CD. So one that comes to mind is when I do Alice in Chains, I will be looking at Jar of Flies because that has No Excuses and a couple other big songs from that EP that garnered a lot of attention. So that would be one of those examples. Most likely I won't be looking at a lot of them because they don't really bring much to the sound or the history of that band. So basically, the gist will be that I will be looking at the whole entire history of a band with these albums. I'll be going week by week albums. Each week I'll be doing a new album until I finish up the discography. I'll talk about how this band was formed, things that are going on during this album process in terms of the band, the legacy that this CD has created, all those big things. And then I'm also going to, at the same time, kind of review it, do a quick review of this CD, why it's so good or why it's not, how it compares to others, and then as each week goes on, I'll be ranking these CDs, so you see how they stack up, and then you'll finally see the definitive list. So as a listener, you'll be like, what albums that I need to listen to, and what ones do I have to stay away from? Basically, this idea came about a couple of years ago because as I'm doing album reviews, I was thinking like, it's weird that I as someone maybe listening to a band for the first time, listen to a CD and get an entirely different perspective than someone who is listening to as a fan. I might really like a CD, but a person who's been a fan of this band may not be because of either it sounds the same as the band has been for years and hasn't progressed, or it's progressed in such a weird way that it alienates the fans. So this is a full depth of these bands and like why something may have changed and was it good or bad. It's all subjective, of course, but this is my take on a lot of this stuff. So the first band that I'm going to be looking into and that I'm really excited about, and basically one of the reasons why I'm doing this new series, is because of this particular band that has had ups and downs, had an amazing start, and kind of teetered off at the end, depending on what part of the fan base that you talk to, and led to certain things, both good and bad, throughout the years. And as someone who is more on the moderate side of this band, I actually like a lot of their later stuff Not as much as, but like more than some bands do, you know. And this particular band is Linkin Park. I know it's an interesting band to talk about. I am known as a Linkin Park apologist. When people talk about like how certain bands are only known for one thing, and or like the idea of changing the style of a band, and always going with should you stay with the thing or should you branch out? This is a prime example of what I always go with, and you'll see why over over the next 6 or 7 weeks. But before we do that, we have to talk about this band before we even get to the CD that we're talking about. So, Linkin Park, for those of you who don't know, they are an American rock / rap metal / new metal band from Agora Hills, California. This band was founded by 3 high school friends that all went to the same Agora Hills High School. So you have Mike Shinoda, who is the rap vocalist / rhythm guitarist, keyboard synthesizer, samples, and programming. That's his main stuff. Then you have Rob Bornin, who is the drums and percussions guy with occasional backing vocals, and Brad Delson on lead guitar and backing vocals. He did a little bit of keyboards over the years, but an important thing to remember for a little bit later is he was the bassist in 2000. They all, after high school, they worked together and recruited a couple other people. Joe Hahn, who is the turntables guy, though he also did keyboard synthesizers and samples and programming and backing vocals, and Dave Farrell on bass and backing vocals and keyboards a little bit later down the line in the discography. They also had a guy named Mark Wakefield on lead vocals to form this band, which was called Zero. Zero with an X. So this is the first iteration of this particular band. With this lineup, they created a 4-track demo called Zero, though it failed to get a record deal. And with this, because of the stalemate of the progression, this prompted 2 of the members to leave. Farrell left for the tour of a band called Tasty Snacks with an X. See what we did in the 90s? God, we're so creative. Which was a Christian punk and ska band. And then Wakefield left to pursue other projects. In the meantime, the rest of the band was looking for a new lead vocalist. And with the help of a man named Jeff Blue, which we'll hear a little bit later about him down the line of this video, he was the vice president of a record company called Zomba Music, and with his help in 1999, they found a new lead vocalist by the name of Chester Bennington, which we all know and love. Basically, they gave Chester Bennington a couple of the songs to re-record with his own ideas, and the band loved it, and it was basically a match made in heaven ever since. At the time, Bennington was a lead singer of a post-grunge band called Grey Days, and I'm glad that he didn't stay with that. Well, with this new lineup, they changed their name to Hybrid Theory in 1999, and they put out a self-titled EP in 1999. It's not actually the Hybrid Theory that we know and love. It is a self-titled album with most of those songs. It's like a 9-song EP, which has most of those ideas, but not the fully formed ones that we've grown to know and love. They circulated this album throughout online chat rooms and forums, because that's what you did back in the 90s, before Spotify and iTunes and all this stuff. They finally changed their name to Linkin Park later in 1999, though they first spelled it as Lincoln, Park, an homage to Santa Monica's Lincoln Park, which is now called Christine Emerson Reed Park. They later changed it to Linkin Park the way that we know it because of some copyright issues, as well as they wanted to be able to get the domain name for a website called linkinpark.com, Linkin Park.com. So that's when they changed it. And with that new name, they tried again to get a record deal, And this time they were able to get it with Warner Brothers Records. And the man who helped them do that, Jeff Blue. Jeff Blue, at that point in time, was the vice president of Warner Brothers Records. And basically, as part of his contract, he was like, hey, we need to sign these guys, so please let's do that. And that started the process of the CD that we're looking into today, which is Hybrid Theory. With the help of Don Gilmore as the lead producer and Andy Wallace as the mixer, they worked on re-recording this 9-track demo and adding a couple other songs in there. Shinoda's raps were mostly changed, but the choruses mostly stayed the same. However, they still didn't have a bassist, so they had a couple people sit in. Scott Koziol and Ian Hornbeck were stand-in bassists, while Delson actually played bass on most of the tracks. There were a couple other people who helped out. The Dust Brothers provided additional beats on one of the tracks called With You. And the process itself took 4 weeks and was recorded at the NRG Recordings in North Hollywood. Now, this is an incredible album, of course. It is one that stood the test of time, and it had four singles. One before the album, which was One Step Closer in September 28th, 2000. And the album actually was dropped on October 24th, 2000, with then 3 other singles coming out: Crawling on March 1st, 2001, Paper Cut in September 25th, 2001, and In the End on October 9th, 2001. Now, I probably don't have to say a lot about this album. It's stood the test of time for a reason. It's a certain album that hollows out a certain point of time. Like, when you think about this album, you think about a certain point in time in your life, in the early 2000s. I certainly do. From start to finish, this album screams angst. It screams, a lot of, things about depression and things about anxiety. It ushered in, or was part of, this new metal, rap metal scene with stuff like Korn, stuff like Deftones, stuff like Limp Bizkit, and it was one of those highlights of that genre. But the biggest reason, at least I think, is because of the dynamic between Chester Bennington and Mike Shinoda. When they are both working on a song together, and they actually have the chemistry with it, where it's about 50-50, or at least around that split in terms of their vocals, songs are great. Paper Cut, awesome starting song where Shinoda gets to show off his flow, and then Bennington comes in with his own powerful vocals, a little bit of screaming, a little bit of somewhat nasally powerful singing. He's not he's known for power, though not in the sense of like some other singers, not like Scott Weiland, not like Chris Cornell. It's his own type of power. And a quick tangent: when Scott Weiland was kicked out of Stone Temple Pilots, and they tried to put in Chester Bennington, I thought that was a little bit weird, only because it was a different type of power that they were looking for, and that was not Chester Bennington. Even though he was in a post-grunge band, that's not the type of sound that works with that band, because it's a different type of power. Though Chester Bennington is powerful in his own right, with his screaming and his high-pitched singing. So you get a lot of songs where when that works together, when that dynamic works together, it's fantastic. Paper Cut. When you have, in the end, of course, the song that everyone remembers from this, or one of the songs that everyone remembers from this album, before it became a meme, before it became an internet joke, it was an amazing song because it's an iconic song. The iconic piano on that song, the iconic rapping that everyone probably from our time probably remembers, the great chorus from Chester Bennington, the build, the fact that it wasn't just a heavy a heavy song, it had its moments of weakness, and it had its moments of interesting electronic work with the turntables from Han. A song like "Place for My Head," personally my favorite song on the album, because it shows off the flow of Shinoda in fast pace. It's probably the most metal song on the album, which I really, really, really like. Um, and then Chester Bennington's screaming on there, his awesome vocals, the guitar line, everything is so iconic from there. Um, put Forgotten, another one of these where it just works together very well in terms of the connection between these two. Now that's not to say that there aren't songs that are good when it's not one of them not featured. For example, "Crawling" is a beautifully somber song, and has amazing music, has an amazing melody line, and it shows off Bennington at his strongest by being weak. If that makes sense. Song like "Pushing Me Away" has an amazing. It's not like it doesn't have anything that really stands out in terms of the music, but has an awesome melody line. By Myself has some really fun parts that also is great because this is another song where Shinoda and Bennington kind of do their own things. So Shinoda's parts are more subdued, while as Bennington is more full of energy and screaming. I mean, there's so many good songs. "With You" is another one of these that works very well when they're both together. Now, I will say, if there are drawbacks from listening to this again, is that some of these songs, when it's honestly Bennington by himself, Bennington's not the strongest of singers at this point in time, or strongest of lead men. You can definitely see that on some of these songs. "Points of Authority," an awesome song that does have help from Shinoda. Another one of these great melodies, but one that kind of it suffers from just Bennington. Song like "Runaway," another one of these where it doesn't really have much Shinoda, and with that, Bennington tries to carry the song, but this song is kind of bland on its own. But honestly, and the interesting one to me is "One Step Closer." "One Step Closer" to me is the weakest song on the album. It doesn't really bring much to the table in terms of lyrical or musical content. It's interesting in the idea of when you go to Paper Cut and then you go to "One Step Closer," the stylistic differences are interesting by having a much more slower, a much heavier sound in terms of Paper Cut. But I think on its own, Bennington isn't able to carry the song. I think it's either the fact that it's been so overplayed, or the fact that it just doesn't seem. Some of the, like this song and "Runaway," seem like they're kind of weaker in terms of structure when compared to everything else. And it's interesting to me that this was the lead single, because I don't remember exactly the like everything that was going on when this came out, but if you were someone who was looking into Linkin Park and heard this song, and then was like, okay, this is the only single that was brought out before the album, and it doesn't have any of Shinoda, and then you hear Paper Cut. I wonder how some of these people felt about that CD, if they were turned off of it because, like, hey, it's rap metal. I had no idea that's what it was going to be. I'm really curious about that, but I think it's an interesting ploy that fortunately worked out in their favor. But all in all, even with the bonus tracks, you have a CD that's about 30, with the bonus tracks about 40 minutes, and honestly, it blows by really quickly. None of these songs really overstay their welcome, and so full of energy and so full of iconic songs that it stands the test of time. At least for me, it's a CD that honestly. It's incredible what they were able to do with a debut album. even the bonus songs. My December, not my favorite. It's a little bit different in sound, and honestly, it probably wouldn't have worked if it was on that first CD, because of the difference. No electric guitar, and it was more of a ballad, and it's a beautiful song, but it's a little bit different from everything else. I don't know if it would have fit. High Voltage, on the other end, awesome song. Um, it's so, like, this is Mike Shinoda at his best. Like, whenever I think about his rapping style, I think about this song first because of the very nerdy, um, like, lyrics, the flow, all of it's really cool. The music isn't great, but his flow is great, and the imagery is interesting. And that brings me quickly to the lyrics. Um, all these lyrics basically talk about one thing or another in terms of a lot of stuff in Chester Bennington's past, bringing him up to where he was now. So, like, Paper Cut, it's about his paranoia. One Step Closer actually is about um, Bennington writing over and over again songs for, like, words for these songs, and then the producer being like, no, you need to write this over again. It's like, well, I'm one step closer to the edge, and I'm about to break, so please just give me this. With You is a song about relationship falling apart. Points of Authority is actually about the child abuse that the sexual child abuse that Bennington had to suffer through when he was a kid. Krong is about him or somebody else losing grip on the world. Runaway is about being not wanting to be a part of society and just wanting to run away. By Myself is about someone with low self-esteem and drug problems, kind of channeling Bennington in himself. In the end, of course, it's about failure and trying hard, but not getting there because, of course, nothing actually matters. A Place for My Head is about someone not fitting in and wanting to actually fit in, but the people around him they don't really care about. Forgotten, it has beautiful imagery, and actually is another one of Shinoda's best work in terms of imagery in the lyrics, in his rap lyrics, and it's talking about memories, distant things, and it's an interesting one. I forgot another one that is on its own as being one of the only instrumentals, at least in the early years of Linkin Park, which is Cure for the Itch, and the only one that features Johan by himself, for the most part, on turntables, doing his thing. It's a really cool little interlude, Getting You to Pushing Me Away, which is about trying to be being basically not having the power to get away from someone, even though they are bad for you, and lying to yourself and being in denial, which honestly, that's another down part to me. I don't think it's the best of ending songs, only because it doesn't really stand out in terms of any of the other ones underneath 5 or 6. But again, I'm not saying that any of these songs are necessarily bad. It's just if I was to break down things that could have been better for this amazing CD, it's a better ending song. But all in all, of course, this is an iconic CD, and it shows because just to go over a little bit of the things that this album got. So it debuted at number 29 on the Billboard 200, and it sold 50,000 copies in its first week. It eventually peaked to number 2 on the Billboard 200, and in the end, got to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, and was eventually also made it to number 1 on the Modern Rock chart. Every one of the other singles, except for Paper Cut, made it on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. Though Paper Cut did chart on other things. It was also, like I said, it reached number 2 on Billboard 200 in early 2002. It was the 11th best performing album on the Billboard 200 for that decade. It reached the top 10 of the chart on the 38th week. It stayed there for 34 weeks. And then since 2017, it had been on that top 200 in some shape or form for 170 weeks. And when it first reappeared at number 167 in February 2011, and stayed on usually when a new album was coming out. So those are small things. Also, it was nominated in the Grammy Awards in 2002 for the Best Rock Album, but lost to U2's All That You Can't Leave Behind. Linkin Park was also nominated for the Best New Artist, but lost to Alicia Keys. And they did win Best Hard Rock Performance for Crawling for that year. It's on plenty of lists. It's included in the 1001 albums that you must hear before you die. It ranked 84 on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's definitive 200 list, number 10 on Loudwire's Best Hard Rock Debut Albums list, and number 1 on Rocksound's 101 Modern Classic Albums of the last 15 years. Cool, you're saying. Those are nice little numbers, right? So let's go back to the commercial success of this album. Like I said, sold 50,000 copies in the first week. Cool. It was certified gold 5 weeks later. That's 500,000 albums sold by 5 weeks. It sold 4.8 million copies in 2001, making it the best-selling album of the year. It was estimated in early 2002 that the album was still selling 100,000 copies per week. And then in 2005, literally 5 years later, it was certified diamond for selling 10 million copies in the US. Now, that's not an easy thing to do. There's honestly only maybe 50 albums all time in the United States that has sold more than this album. It's estimated that worldwide it has sold more than 30 million copies. And it was the best debut album in terms of selling since Appetite for Destruction, which is Guns N' Roses' album in 1987. That album sold 18 million copies. That's a hard one to beat, but still, that's incredible. That is an amazing thing to do, and especially for a debut album, that's really, really impressive. And that's good and bad, because, of course, who doesn't want to be, widely known, widely accoladed for a debut album, especially for a band that was finishing up college when they put this out. I've actually heard a story on one of my favorite podcasts, Dan Le Batard Show, where they interviewed Mike Shinoda not too long ago, and they were talking about how when this album came out, they were finishing up their last semester at college, and I think some did and some didn't, and it's just interesting to be literally they were finishing up college and they created one of the best albums in the last 15 to 20 years. It's the best selling hard rock album of the 21st century so far, and that's something to say, and so that's good. The bad thing, I think, is you set the bar so high with that. There are some debut albums that are great. There are very few that that hit that high and then go great from there. Guns N' Roses. Let's take a quick look at that. Guns N' Roses had some good albums afterwards, but look at where they are now. Chinese Democracy, this highly anticipated album bombed, and I'm not saying that that's what happened to Linkin Park, but it's not surprising when you look at the trend of this album and then afterwards as to see that some of the problems come up, because how do you go from there? It is noted that they also put out, before their next album, they put out Reanimation, which is a remix album, and one of my favorite remix albums of all time. I actually did a review of that album last year, and it's amazing. It's a remix album, but they actually reinvent some of these songs, most of these songs from this album, and make it basically their own. So it's 13 or 14 actually new songs in comparison to the songs beforehand. It's an awesome CD. If you haven't listened to this one, first off, of course, listen to Hybrid Theory. It's amazing for a reason. Um, if you haven't, it's a little slice of time that you should take out to hear what the early 2000s was like, and then listen to Reanimation so that you can hear the other ideas that come from this album. So yeah, that's where we start. It's my first part. We'll come back next Wednesday, hopefully, for the second part and see just what happened after Hybrid Theory. But it is a little bit long. We're going at half an hour. If you have watched this, thank you so much. It hopefully won't be as long in the next couple of parts because I finally explained what this actual thing is, this series, and then I put a lot of time going over the band and their formation, and everything like that. So this next one, I hopefully will be like 20 minutes. But anyways, if you like this, of course, biggest thing, subscribe to my channel so you can see more of this and keep yourself updated with this particular series because it's going to be fun. I'm really excited to go over the rest of these albums. Comment on your thoughts about Hybrid Theory and what you like about it, what you don't like about it, like the memories that you have when this one came out. Like personally for me, I remember not actually owning a physical copy, but I remember having a burned CD of it, as well as their next album, and loving all of it, and having to steal it from my brother a lot of times because he was listening to it. Um, a lot of memories come up, and I would love to hear yours as well. But also just share it with your friends, see what they think, and just keep on watching my videos. So the next one will be hopefully out Wednesday, and we'll see how it stacks up. Of course, right now this is number one, so we'll see how the next one stacks up, and then I'll see you on Saturday for another cover song. Peace.